Today, I'm joined by Colin Newlyn from Decrapify Work. Is there a better name? Colin is a recovering corporate executive who is on a mission to decrapify work. In his career, he experienced the highs and lows, starting in an open, supportive, and enabling culture and ending up in some thoroughly toxic ones. And he knows which one was best. He wants to inspire people in organisations to use the agency they have to improve their own work experience, that of the people they work with, and ultimately the whole organisation. Colin is variously described as a sage, critical friend, optimistic realist, independent thinker, coach, mentor, and pirate. He writes blogs and speaks regularly on leadership, teams, the future of work, and the insanity of the organisations that we sometimes have today. He helps people start mutinies, break rules, and make good trouble. Sounds like our kind of guest. So let's wait no more. Hi, Colin, and welcome to Make It Thrive, the Company Culture podcast. So, for our audience who are listening today, share a little bit of what landed you into the world of Decrapify Work. Would you be able to sort of share your story with us?
Yeah, of course. Hi, Lizzie. Glad to be here. So I had a career that was in two parts, really. The first part was wonderful, and the second part was not so good, shall we say. So I started off, and I had a 15-year career or so in a large telecoms communication company. And the first 7 years of that were great. I worked in these two quite small entrepreneurial organizations where you pretty much could design your own career and do lots of interesting stuff. And if you had an idea, people would say, okay, go and see if you can make it work. And that was great for me. I really thrived in those sorts of environments. And then we got merged into another bit of the organization, which was very, very different culture. It was very hierarchical, command and control, fear-driven culture. And I didn't really know what was going on because I thought wasn't work like the place I'd been in before, So that was a very difficult sort of period, not just for me, but for all the rest of us that had got merged in there, sort of like wandering around thinking, what the hell's going on here? And it seemed to me it was completely counterproductive because they got a lot less out of us in that environment, and it was extremely unpleasant, and it caused a lot of stress for people. And so I suppose I've always been sort of faced with this question, well, why are more organisations like that second part of my career than the first part, when the first part is obviously so much better? And after much sort of musing about this, I guess, I got to the point where I felt I really had to try and sort of delve into it and say something a bit about it, because I suppose what really kicked off the Decrapify Work stuff in a way was there was a lot of stuff around employee engagement, and I was sort of I was doing coaching at the time. I was sort of getting involved in this stuff a bit, and I kept reading all this stuff about employee engagement and thinking, well, if I was an employee engagement consultant, my advice would be, why don't you make your staff feel like you give a shit? Because that would really improve engagement, because most of the time they think you don't. And so that sort of led me off down this path, and we ended up with Decrapify Work.
Amazing. I love it. And I love the name as well. It's so playful, but also very true. Because really, that's exactly what we're trying to do is to remove all the crap that we keep getting put into these workplaces. And I feel you on that level. I know we've spoken before about that comparison between being in an organization where you feel like you can move things forward and you have an impact and you see the results of your work, but then also being stuck in an organization or a business where everything feels so stifled and like everything is a struggle, that it's just almost comes to the point where you're thinking, even just to do my job feels difficult, let alone be part of this company. I mean, we kind of met through the Be More Pirate Network meetup,
Yeah.
because they're both pirates, should we call it? Modern day pirates. But it's something that obviously with that movement, it's all about removing those kind of bureaucracies as well, and those things that get stuck in the way. And from meeting you, obviously, I then discovered your infamous newsletters, which you call the not so newsletters, which I really enjoy reading. And it's one thing I've actually shared a lot with my network, because there's so many bits in there that you pick up where you take something, that's either in the news or the media, or, someone's talking about something and you really shed some real light onto it. I mean, what motivated you to start that newsletter in the first place?
Well, because I realised I wasn't going to be able to make it into a very good podcast. That was the original idea. I thought I'll just do a podcast and I'll have a bit of a ramble. And I recorded a couple. I thought, no, they're dreadful. They're like, they don't really work. Writing is very much my sort of medium, I guess. So I started doing the newsletter, and it was really it's a combination of sharing a lot of the stuff that I've picked up along the way, things from other fields that I thought, I don't know why people aren't talking about this. Like a lot of stuff out of coaching really does apply to organisations and management and leadership. But also stuff that was driving me bonkers. Just some of the stuff people talk about in the business, and I would go out for a walk to listen to a podcast, and I'd be shouting at the podcast as I'm walking through there's a forest near me. Fortunately, normally there weren't people around, so it was okay.
I was going to say, I've got visions of you, Colin, shouting in a forest. Okay, there's the local madman.
Yep, that's me. So I was really sort of trying to talk about some of those things. And that nonsense that it's not only is nonsense spoken, but like whole oeuvres of work are created around this rubbish. So
definitely, I know we spoke previously about how things can, especially in the media, as we know, bad news sells, and it's sometimes the narrative that we get told in the media or the press, or what they like to push through, it gets so manipulated and warped in so many ways that actually, the true story behind it, no one's making the real effort to actually get the opinion from people who are being impacted. And especially at the moment with we're still kind of going through this kind of COVID hangover, I suppose you'd call it, where businesses don't know what they should be doing. Should we be doing hybrid? Are we defaulting back into the office? And I see so many of them. I mean, you're probably the same. You go on LinkedIn as an example, and down the right hand side, you've got all of those news feeds, and I just read some of the titles of those as well, and I'm sat there getting so annoyed. I mean, what's one of the biggest, I suppose, stories that's really pressing your buttons right now in terms of what we're getting sold in the media?
I think, it's been the case for quite a while. This whole sort of false choice between work from home and work from the office, and so my background was I was remote in many ways. Like back when I was in BT, I had a laptop. I worked on email. That was my product line that I ran, and I used to go around plugging in all over the place and doing work, and it just seemed perfectly normal to me. So there was never this dichotomy, and then suddenly everyone has to do this, which is like, yeah, guys, you could have done this 20 years ago. It would have been a lot better for everybody, but never mind. And then this whole sort of false argument is generated around it. And actually what most people ignore is that most of what COVID did was actually show problems that were already there. It sort of threw everything into this relief of black and white. So there's no grey anymore. We could see where problems were around. And the office was a really bad environment for a lot of people. Half the time people didn't go to the office anyway. So people were already working in other places and only going in about half the time. So really, what needs to happen now is a complete rethinking of how we work and how we go about work, of which the location of where people work is that's almost a downstream issue. It's how they work and what they're working on that's really important. And I've long been an advocate of asynchronous communication, because basically that was the thing that the email enabled. I didn't have to be in the room with people, and I worked with people all over the world, and it didn't always work, because sometimes you went away on a business trip, and you'd end up at 2 o'clock in the morning in your hotel bedroom having to write a product information brief because it needed to be out by the next day. Whereas before you had that sort of mobility, you would just be out of the office and it wouldn't happen. So so that whole debate is really, we're just not having the right conversation about the right thing. So the real issue is work doesn't work for other people. Some of that is due to location, and the long days, that not having to commute certainly solves part of that problem, but it doesn't solve the problem that a lot of work is, meaningless, pointless, tedious, unnecessary, and the environment that people in is poor. I think there was some research recently about why people are, resigning in big numbers and getting jobs elsewhere, and far and away the biggest cause was toxic environments. So it comes back to my original point. So that out of my two sort of modes of work, the first bit, which was great, and the second bit, which was terrible, more and more organizations have become terrible. And we have to look at why that is and try and reverse that process. And the reasons why, what I came up with was what I called the process of crapification, and the sort of 6 forces of crapification. So I think things have got worse over time, not because someone decided, like, let's make work really shit for everybody. Well, I'm sure there were some people out there who thought that, but it's a number of different forces that have combined with each other, and we need to stop that happening, because I think a lot of companies are not really working anymore. I mean, they're just not functioning properly, and we might see quite a few of them disappear in the next year or so.
Yeah, it's going to be really fascinating, because again, like we saw when we had the 2008 financial recession, there was so much disruption that went on after that. So you had the likes of Airbnb, lots of different disruptors coming through from people that, brands and businesses that hadn't really been operating effectively anymore, or really putting people at their very core of what they do. So I feel like there is going to be this real interesting shift. I mean, I'd love to get your perspective on, the narrative that gets told, like you say, work is actually a much more complex thing than just where we work. It's how we work, it's what we do. And what I continue to see at the moment is, unfortunately, quite a glorification sometimes of a particular type of leader, kind of giving this big speech. I've seen it twice now. So there was a podcast recently that I was listening to where, again, and this isn't anything sexist, but it is a white male leader telling people how work needs to be, and then again a blog post glorifying leaders who have a very authoritative style, people like Musk, Zuckerberg, idolizing these kind of tech leaders. Again, they all come from the same ilk of being white and male and telling us how work needs to be done. And unfortunately, people take that so much for gospel, as, that's what we need to do because he said so.
Yeah, the old hero worship of the hero leader. Yes, I think people like Musk and Zuckerberg are dreadful. They're appalling human beings in the first place. They're quite odd. They're not. I mean, they are outliers, I think you could say, in lots of different ways. And leadership so as a friend of mine is fond of stating, Dr. Peter Senge, that's not my friend worked with him, said that leadership is the capacity of an organization to create its own future, I think, or a capacity of a group of people. So we have this idea that leadership is this thing done by a person to us, and actually it's not. It's a group endeavor, and you need lots of people leading, and all the stuff that that is handed down from from the boardroom, like purpose and the values and all that stuff. That would be much better and much more effective if it was the result of a conversation across the whole organisation that everybody contributed to, and then you'd really have some values and purpose that would be meaningful to everybody. And so I think that's we have to move more towards that collective way of working, which is how, and this is part of what annoys me about when you read some of the press and some of the books. If you look at what people say about teams, then it's all about the collective and coming together and supporting each other and high levels of trust, and yet when they talk about the organisation, all that stuff's forgotten. Well, surely the same stuff applies. I mean, if it's important that we work collectively at the team level, why isn't it important that we work collectively at the higher levels? So that's
yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those things where we do glorify. It's very easy to look at some of it, especially because so much of it is sometimes glamorized at the moment. It's very
well, we shouldn't forget that these people spend quite a lot of money on PR agencies to write their stories for them. So Facebook spends an awful lot of money on promoting an image of itself that is not necessarily reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And this big shift as well into personal branding as well has a slightly edge to it, a dark shadow, should we say, that it casts, because it's very easy. For example, I was watching somebody share about the shared a clip of a leader talking about giving what appeared to be a very highly educated answer to a question about why should people go into the workplace, and he was it's all about our behaviors and we need to be around people. There's all this really pushing the office perspective, and this guy came on and said, unfortunately it's more complex than that, actually. And for example, he said, I'm on the neurodiverse spectrum. It has been a horrible experience going into a work environment in an office when I have the needs that I have, and I'm so much happier and healthier at home. And because this particular person was on quite a well-known podcast, it's worrying that people are taking that as something to go, oh, okay, well, he's right. He clearly knows what he's doing because he's obviously, CEO of whatever. And I just, there's just not enough diversity in the conversation.
No, absolutely. I mean, like, what the hell do CEOs know about what goes on in office? I mean, if you've ever worked in an organisation of any size, you'll know that, like, what the people at the top thinks happen is definitely not what goes on day to day. And yeah, we're back to the male, pale and stale brigade spouting stuff. They're also the people that have the power, and I think this is a very important thing to look at. How you feel in an office is very different depending on what level of power you have, and it's the people who don't have power that don't really want to go back in the office and be subjected to those power dynamics again. And those power dynamics were a problem before COVID. Again, there's the cultures in offices were very skewed towards extrovert men. I mean, I would say white, but I guess in other cultures, it's whatever the dominant cultural group is would predominate. and people who like playing the politics games. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, it's really tedious, and well, at best it's tedious. At worst, it can be quite damaging.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, workplaces have been crap for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that really also kicked me off of this. But I mean, the evidence is there. I mean, the employment engagement survey by Gallup has been going for 22 years now, and the results have never been anything other than dire, and consistently dire. And you could look at the methodology and its self-reporting and all this sort of, but it's so consistent over such a long time. It tells its own story, which is this is awful. And there's lots of talk about it, and of course there's not very much done about it, because that probably means people at the top changing how they behave, and that's
they don't want to change themselves, they want to change everyone else, Colin.
Yeah, exactly. And that was that's my message in Decrapify Work, is very much aimed at the people further down, because the change is not going to come from the guys at the top. They've proven that, because if it was going to come, it would have happened by now. And COVID has just shown even more so that they're really out of touch, and have they don't really have an understanding of what happens in the workplace. So they were all amazed that their people were so capable and inventive and able to adapt to working from home in an incredibly short period of time, because they didn't really understand how capable the people they had were. And now that's all been done, and that's all been forgotten. It's like, right, we want you back in the office now so we can see what you're up to. Make sure you're not swinging the lead. It's just ridiculous. I mean,
so what advice do you have for people that you mentioned that very much your kind of approach is the people power kind of influence? A lot of people believe they're kind of powerless, or it's certainly they're made out to be powerless. What are the things that you feel that could kind of shake things up a bit?
So, but you're right that people are often feel they're powerless, because that's what the organisation does. That's not what they say they do, but that's actually what they do. So they inculcate this learned helplessness. That, well, I can't read that. If I do that, it's not going to have any impact, and so forth. And actually, I don't think that's true. I think the people, particularly people who are in positions where they've got a small handful of people that they're responsible for. So sort of team leaders, but anybody who's making something happen in the organisation actually has a lot of power, because they are the only people that make anything happen in the organisation, to be honest, or anything that sticks. And if you've got a team that you're leading, you establish the culture in that team, not what the company says. It's how you behave and the behaviour that you encourage amongst the people in your team, and what you will and won't stand for, and where you set the boundaries. And so you've actually got much more power and agency than the company would like you to realise. So it's a question of trying to use that to make some change happen. And that's where the sort of be more pirate mentality comes in, which is, well, I'm not going to ask for permission because I'll never get it, but I'm just going to make some change happen. And to do that, start on a small scale. Just identify stuff you can do to make better. And I suspect a lot of people actually are doing it subconsciously anyway. So if you're, my whole sort of attitude towards leading is that you create an environment for people to thrive in, and if that's your approach, it's like, well, what can I do to make life better for my team? Like, how can I? So a lot of people will be familiar with being sort of a human shield for all the bullshit that comes down from the top and the bureaucracy and stuff. But it's like, well, what else? What can we do to make it better for us and make our life more pleasurable? And maybe that'll have an impact upon other people. So that's, quite often you'll see change happen. A group will do, a team will start to do something a bit different, and it will start working for them. and then other teams will say, "Oh, what did you do there? Let me know." And it sort of spreads across the organisation in that organic way. That, and I think that's really the way you can make change happen. And it's a pirate phrase. They didn't try and change the world; they changed their world.
Yeah.
And the worst that can happen is that you make life better for you and the people that you work with, and you start to build that muscle of making change happen, which is a great muscle to have. And if you do come to the end of the road with that organisation, then at least you're going from, well, I achieved this and I stood up for what I believed in, and I've got that capability to take forward into the next role. And that's where I want people to be. I don't want people to be in that stage of so beaten down and demoralised that they're just like falling out of the organisation because they just can't bear it anymore. Because that's a really hard place to move forward from. So you might end up leaving the organisation, but at least you can make a few blows for freedom before you go.
I love that. You've mentioned there, Colin, about the things that people can do and how you've covered it's been crap for a long time. So I'm intrigued to know, from someone who has been watching from the sidelines and been part in and with these companies that have done so many things that just make you kind of scratch your head and wonder why. What are the 5 things you would do if you were running a company? What would you just definitely not do? Things that you're just like, why are companies doing these things and they just really need to stop? What are the things that always kind of come into your mind when you're thinking about the big no-nos?
I think it's a bit of a I suppose I naturally look at it the other way around, because I sort of look at like, okay, what are the sort of principles and the frameworks you put in place to make a positive environment emerge. But I guess a couple of things. I mean, I think you generally want to have as few rules and regulations as possible. I was one of my favourite books is Reinventing Organisations by Frederick Laloux, which I know you've read as well, which in some ways was another sort of big contribution to this journey, because it suddenly gave us a language to talk about this stuff that we didn't have before. And he makes the point that if you look at what most rules and regulations say in an organisation, what they say is, we don't trust you, we think you're lazy, and we don't think you're worth what we pay you. And the messages it sends out are terrible. So probably the first thing I'd do is get hold of the staff employment handbook and throw it away.
Yeah, 100%.
And then I would get rid of all the security policies, because when I was in BT, we had various security classifications, because some of the stuff that they did for the government, and was you had to have security clearance from the government to work in those departments, and so there was some very serious stuff there. But the spread of this, what people will put in their documents, so it would start off private, and then it becomes in confidence, and it becomes strictly in confidence, and people are putting like in strictest confidence on stuff that was like, well, most people will read this and not even understand it, let alone there's no value in this. This is just people showing off, and it's really unnecessary, because actually what you want is as wide a flow of information in an organisation as possible. So, and you want to stop people trying to use organisations. You want to stop people using information as a way of exercising power, or corralling power to them. So I'd get rid of all that stuff, because there's very, very little information that is really commercially sensitive, and very little of it is the state secret. So
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so that's a couple of things, I guess.
Yeah, rip up the handbook, stop with all the security policies.
Yeah, I mean, like band meetings, possibly. I don't know. I mean, so many, so much time is wasted on meetings. And this is another thing that drives me nuts. Is we talk about, we bandy words around, and they have such broad application. It's almost meaningless. And we talk about meetings, but there are so many different types of meetings, and we don't differentiate between them. We don't run them differently. We just have this like, well, let's all get in a room and waste an hour. So I would definitely stop meetings. So I think and I think that is partly what happens when you move to a more modern work pattern, because actually having a meeting becomes expensive. When you're all sitting in an office, then calling a meeting was not that. It was how things were done. I mean, I worked back in the day where the only way you could do things was by having a meeting, because people didn't even have telephones on their desks, because you had to go and see people. But it was sort of like priced in. Whereas now, if people are working not in the office in a distributed fashion, actually getting people together has a very, very substantial and identifiable cost, which is as it should be.
Yeah.
And so you should make meetings difficult, I guess. Yeah. Other than, but there are some meetings. So a lot of progress meetings on projects and stuff need to be regular, and they need to be short and punctual. And in Agile, they have stand-ups every morning. You need that sort of structure, but they don't need to be in person, because they actually work really well over Zoom and Teams and stuff like that. Yeah. So we need to get much smarter about how we use language and what we're talking about, and define terms. Yeah. So it comes back to me talking about leadership earlier. I mean, leadership just means so many different things to so many different people. It's very hard to have a sensible conversation about it.
Yeah, it is.
And culture and values.
Yeah, it's all so subjective, isn't it? And there's so much, like you say, everyone has, from their perspective, a different approach to it, and
well, they have a different understanding of what you're actually talking about. I mean, it's just that you can not be talking about the same topic at all.
Yeah.
But using the same words.
And I'm never forgetting, I think I've shared this story before, where when I started Liberty Mind back in 2018 and I was talking about culture, I used to laugh, because when I first started kind of having conversation with the businesses, they were just like, oh, so you're going to come and do our social events? No, not. I'm not a glorified event planner. No, that's not company culture.
No.
So I just remember having these really, and I just remember thinking, there's, like you say, there's just such a lack of understanding. There's still a lack of understanding, and a lot of education that needs to go on around new ways of working and company.
Yeah, I mean, culture is a relatively new idea. I say relatively new. I mean, again, I'm quite old, so when I started, people didn't talk about culture very much. And then Tom Peters and the other guy came along with In Search of Excellence, and all this stuff started being talked about. But it's talked about as the solution to, it's a silver bullet thing. Oh, if you just get our culture right, it'll be, and it's no, that isn't. You need to know what your culture is. Your culture is emergent, so you have a culture.
Yeah.
And you need to understand what that is, and you need to take action to sort of try and encourage it to be a positive culture for everybody in whatever aspects you want. But but you can't really set culture. I mean, again, that's the management team being out of touch and having the conceit that we just pulled the culture lever and the machine will work better. And of course, the Kinseys and the rest of them will come along and sell them a massively expensive program to do that, and they'll pull the culture lever, and then they'll wonder why 18 months later things seem to have gone back to where they were before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an evolution. It's such a journey, and like you say, it's really never ending, because there's so much relearning that companies have to do. And I always say to businesses, you have a culture, whether you realize it or not.
Absolutely. You have several cultures, in
You
fact.
know, it's not just as simple as dictating some values from the top down, and we've done culture.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely but that's the whole sort of, they still look at the organisation as, with through the machine metaphor.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think that's one of the things we really have to sort of blow out the water, stop using that, because it's permeated the language so much, but also the way people think. So the idea that that you can set the thing and you can tune the organisation to get certain outputs, it really doesn't work like that. It's more, I mean, if you in terms of I guess an industrial process, it's more like brewing or something like that.
Yeah,
you
totally.
sort of hope the beer is going to be good or whatever at the end of the day, but you can't be sure.
I love that. That's going to be my new tagline now, Colin. Brewing culture since 2018. Love that. Amazing. So I thought it'd be fun this episode to do a bit of a quick fire round. Are you up for it, Colin?
We'll give it a go. I'm normally terrible at these.
I mean, it's not that quick fire, let's be honest. But yeah. So here we go. So song or playlist that makes you instantly feel good. What's at the top of your list?
I guess, I mean, I like some soul stuff from the sort of Motown Stax stuff onwards. Because that was, my brother was big into Motown, so that was an early influence, and that always gets my feet tapping.
Oh,
so
love
puts
that.
me in a good mood.
Oh, interesting. A book or podcast that changed your life?
We've already mentioned Reinventing Work, which it just talked about a load of stuff that I and a lot of other people had not been able to articulate. And I think there's some flaws with his analysis now, but it was just this, wow, the world can be different, and this is this is how we can talk about it. So that was really influential. And of course, Be More Pirate has
absolutely,
which was just I took that like a duck to water, really. So.
Yeah. The best advice you've ever been given?
Best advice? I don't know. I probably almost certainly didn't take it. So.
Fair enough. Very, very pirate of you, Colin.
I mean, that's,
Love it. And a bucket list item that you're yet to tick off?
I'd like to go and see the Grand Canyon, because I used to be a bit of I was quite interested in geography in the past. So yeah, that, or New Zealand, which has also got some fabulous geographical features.
Oh yeah, that's on my
and hobbits as well. Maybe New Zealand. Maybe New Zealand's a better call.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's on my bucket list too. Such a beautiful, beautiful place. And the last one, if you could create a placard for a public protest, what would it be?
I think I'd probably be really dull about it. I mean, I quite like those ones that say things like, that's enough of, we've had enough of all of that. Or we don't approve of things like this. That sort of, British protest. But I think just stronger together, because I really do believe that, we achieve far more. That's our evolutionary history. The reason we are the dominant species on the planet is because we figured out how to work together in bigger and bigger groups, and we need to get back to that. And about the relationships and human interaction and community. So I don't think people really do want culture. I think what they really want is community.
Definitely.
And all this talk about going back to the office is really say, come back to the office for community. And people are saying, but there wasn't any community there in the first place.
Yeah, we all worked in silence.
with our heads down. We got told off we went to the toilet too often. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much for joining me today, Colin. I'm going to leave all of the show notes for Decrapify Work for anybody that wants to come and discover your work, and also sign up to your not so newsletter, as you call it, which I would highly recommend people do, because it is, you know what, you get a lot of emails these days, let's be honest, but that is one that I always reserve time for with a cup of tea. So I definitely recommend that one. So yeah, thank you so much, Colin.
I hope it occasionally makes you snort into your cup of tea.
It does. It does make me giggle. It's not only thought-provoking, but it's entertaining. It's just, yeah, there's so few newsletters that actually, engage me in the way that you do. So it's even saved in a folder, just to give you extra kudos. It's even saved in a folder called Emails I Love. So that is how much dedication your emails get. But thank you so much, Colin. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. And thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Make It Thrive, the Company Culture Podcast.